Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Inverted podcast, the Inverted PMs, where we discuss everything security, abuse, quality, infra, basically any place where success is when nothing happens. And everything is different for us. Everything is kind of upside down. That's why we call it inverted. And with me today are my friends Dario and Dana. Like many a Friday afternoon when we do these
Or,
recordings, we
or
huddle
Friday
together.
morning.
Or Friday morning, yes, Dana's in Seattle this week. And yeah, Tom, we are sorry you had to work on an escalation at work. We wish you all the best. Being inverted people, we know about escalations and how they affect us. And one of the things that's very important in escalations is clarity. Now, I'm not going to talk about escalations today, but we are going to talk about our job as inverted PMs to create clarity in security subjects. And one of those subjects is when something makes people think that what you're about to do is not good enough. And I think Dario, you mentioned this interesting article to us this week, or Dana. Dario, want to take it away?
Yeah, it was an article and one of the many that go on. I think Dana shared this one about the title was "Synced Passkeys are unsafe," and then the article would go into length about the drawbacks of having credentials synced across devices and about the ability of tricking people into using less secure authentication methods like downgrade attacks. And
Dario,
what
before
this
you continue,
Mhm.
for those folks that are listening or watching that don't know exactly what passkeys are and what a synced versus not a synced passkeys, could you quickly say a few lines about that?
Absolutely. So a passkey is a credential that is not based on a knowledge factor. So it's nothing you have to remember. It's a mix between something you install on your computer and something you own. And synced passkeys, they are like passwords that you don't type in, but they sync across your credential manager, like your iCloud keychain. You create the passkey for, I don't know, to access the the airline loyalty program on your phone. It asks to create a passkey. So next time you access it on your computer, like on your that's from the same vendor, then you don't have to enter a password. You just go through unlock your screen or through Face ID or Touch ID and are logged in. The
So,
advantage
so
there
before we
is
before we continue, just to summarize, so a passkey is kind of a key. If I would have to explain it to my mom, that opens my account. I have one for eBay, for my Google account, for many places, and they can live in different places. They can live on my computer. They can live on a physical USB key that some people carry, or you can store them in something that syncs. Like you mentioned, Apple Keychain, but others that might be people might know is like LastPass or the Google Password Manager. And the article you mentioned said that that syncing of passkeys makes them totally unusable as solution, or like what was happening there?
yeah, it implies, at least through the title, that synchronizing passkeys across different devices using a password manager, using iCloud Keychain or Google Password Manager makes them unsafe. And that just reminds me of so many situations where you're in a project as an inverted product manager, try to solve a problem. Like in this case, companies that are deploying passkeys, they want to solve the inherent problems of passwords that they can be guessed, can be stolen, can be phished, can be reused, and all those things with something that is significant better because it deterministically solves that problem. But now somebody finds a case where
Tiny
it's
hole.
it's still not perfectly secure. And that's what I think as a superpower from a inverted PM is to dissect, is this imperfection or is this attack vector relevant for your scenario or not?
Well, that's a good question because maybe Dana, I want to go to you. I've had this happen to me, right? You've had this happen. Some executive that doesn't really know the space really well, or like a friend or someone, they run in with an article like this, and they say, "At this company, we're deploying passkeys, but they are not secure." Right? It's. I think you called it sensationalism, right, Dario? It's like creating sensation. That's what the writer of the article is doing. How do you respond in that case, Dana? What do you do?
I I think you first need to fully understand what the claim is and how your piece of that works or how you part of the product works. And then it's really like, as we talked about in the past, like understanding what is actually the feature of the requirements. You need to boil down and figure out what is important about the claims and what is like ancillary or really not, probably not going to happen, because a lot of times there are these really corner edge cases that take, like, I won't say act of God, but like only like a nation state that's been working on something for like 5 years could pull off. Or like there was one, like air gap networks, and like if someone could get into the data center and set up this equipment that could like monitor wavelengths of the actual monitor, they could get into the air gap system. Well, that would take a extraordinary amount of effort to do that compromise. And although you need to consider that, it's not a problem in everyday use, right? And so you need to be able to tease apart what's actually important for day to day, and what's important that impacts your features or your product versus what could happen. Because as we've mentioned in the past, like fear of something that's going to happen can impinge on like improvement, or like making taking the next steps in evolution of your product, right? Like fear of something, these edge cases can prevent innovation, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And you really need to not you really need to take a lot of that out of your decisions or your analysis and boil down to what exactly, like, is there really a problem that a lot of users are going to run into, or will it cause a lot of damage if this thing happens? And kind of boil that down and make decisions based on that, and communicate your analysis to your management and your peers and people that are asking about this thing, and your customers, right? Like because your customers might be, it might cause fear in your customer base.
Mm. And
Yeah.
go
Maybe
ahead,
I would
Dario.
add, like, and as an inverted PM, you're just in the middle of that chaos or of that system. You have to make sure that the engineering or the execution team are not distracted by fears caused by of in the leadership of reading articles or maybe even just the headlines. You have to make sure that the customers don't lose trust in your roadmap. So you're in the middle, you're at the central point where you have to make sure that a simple sentence like easy ways to bypass Face ID, or passkeys are unsafe, or the internet is broken, that things like this don't derail your whole organization, because in the end you are all accountable of progress and impact.
I love the internet is broken. I've never heard that one before, but the others I did hear. I'm sort of reminded by something that we recorded 1 or 2 weeks ago with Tom's connection, about bringing senior teams together and just explaining what is your risk, right? Because what you're saying is that this example of passkeys, right? The claim is passkeys that sync are unsafe. And then the question is, versus what? And what you're just saying is Dana, is that you used words, but I think I would summarize it as, you have to go back to the executive and say, what is really the problem, right? Like,
Right.
if we want to say we are okay with the risk of being phished, then you don't even need to do passkeys. But if you say we just don't want to be phishable, but we still allow multiple devices stuff, then it doesn't matter if you synced or non-synced passkeys, because you've made that risk, right? So if someone would come to me and say, like, hey, I found this hole in this security thing, I would ask them, okay, what is the problem? What is the appetite that you want to, what's the flag you want to put in the sand to say this is where we want to go? Then I can respond to you whether or not we should be worried about this article.
Right. And a lot of times it's not a problem with your specific technology you're working on. It could be something ancillary that is out of your control, or you don't have influence over. And so you need to figure that part out, right? and that may or may not make it less important, right?
Yeah.
The the other thing I wanted to mention is like we're talking to inverted PMs, security PMs. It's kind of the nature of the business that you run into these issues. And I just said on LinkedIn, I made a small comment about crisis just yesterday, right? Like you always, just because of our space, find ourselves in crisis. It could be the stuff that you're working on, or it could be someone else's stuff that you're brought into because you have the experience. And it's just so, like these things we talk about are things you end up doing all the time. And so it's important to understand this is it's kind of the nature of the area that we're in, is that we run into these security issues or these, sensationalized things. Um, and
But sometimes, sometimes we also create that sensation for ourselves, right? Which is where it's another place where we can make clarity. And I'll give you an example. I once worked on like an escalation with a customer, and the person that was the main respondent for the customer, for them, it was the very first sort of escalation of this kind they've ever like encountered. Whereas I would do them regularly or support them regularly or support them from friends or others. And so for me, it was normal, and you sort of have your playbook, and but this other person was the first one, and they were working until like deep in the night to try and answer email and create clarity. And I had to tell them like, hey, it's okay, calm down. This is not the first time this is happening in the world, and yes, this is very
right,
serious, and we will take it really seriously. We'll communicate well, but you shouldn't be pulling all nighters over this because it's not gonna change, right? And so this person creates this sensation for themselves, and maybe that's called panic in that case.
but I think you mentioned it like three or four times, but I think that really is the key is your job is to provide clarity in all of this, right? And sort through the claims and what's right and wrong, and then propagate in a clear manner what exactly is the issue and what is the impact and how you think that it should be addressed, and if something isn't a problem. And um so clarity is really, I think, an important skill for inverted product manager, because it's the same as like if your customers are asking for these features that they need, and you need to be able to understand clarity of like what is their specifics versus what is good for the platform that you want to put in, and then you need to be able to turn around and provide that clarity and that focus and the right decisions to everybody else that is going to build it out or sell it or um and so like listening to us talk, it's like that seems to be like a very key part in nature of the position of an inverted PM is creating clarity, right?
And I think
Yeah,
clarity is
Dario, how would you do that? You've done a lot of these different types of subjects, right? What are some of the things you do to create clarity?
you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's a process. It's a constant process. It's not just a reaction to an article or a headline or a statement. It starts when you define your strategy for your problem space. It continues when you do your, quarterly OKRs. Like, because all of those things you define, what you want to achieve, why do you want to achieve something, what is success, what is failure for your problem space. All of those things, they will then help you as a reference point. So if you've done your homework as a inverted PM over the last, I don't know, weeks, months, or quarters, you can respond to these like sensationalist headlines and statements by pointing people at, but this is the problem we're solving. This is what we identified as being our priority. And because it's part of the process in most organizations or in well-functioning organization, leadership was involved in that, or at least informed. So you can bring them back from the panic state of, hey, you're now afraid that we invest in something that's not perfect or not good enough. Let's bring back to what we agreed on is important for this quarter. And everything that is not part of this priority is a distraction. So it's not just something you react to, but it's a foundation you build over over years or over multiple planning periods. And if you do sprints, it's a sprint, and if you do quarterly OKRs, it's in that process. But you already prepare the clarity of what is important, why is important, and what is not important way ahead of time, so you can respond to these types of distractions.
Yeah, so creating clarity by seeding values and seeding ideas and making sure that
and you continue with the daily thing.
Yeah, repeatedly, and also because these headlines will keep coming, right? And because people just make money out of making headlines that are sensationalist, and also because we put them in our own heads, as we just talked with Dana about. Dana?
I just, as Dario was talking, I was thinking about when we talk about clarity and understanding what happens in the response to your management or the press or whatever, you also need to be very concise. Like, you don't want to generate, like, your response isn't like this big blog article that lays out like all these concepts and ideas of what to defend what you did. You have to be like very concise in your communication so that people understand, your management understands your points, and everything. Kind of, there's no room for fluff in these types of things. You notice that statements that get put out are, but by the company, is about the issues, are like, there's a set of ideas they want to get through in that message, and it's very clear, it's very short, and so clarity is not only understanding what's going on, but there's clarity in the communication of in your response that you need to work on as well. And I think that's worth noting. Like Jeroen was mentioning, someone who was stayed up all night drafting like responses and things like that, and like ideally it's like bullet, like talking points, right? Like bullet points and things like that. It's very clear about what the responses are, or what you are saying should is the reason why things are okay, or like we made those decisions, right?
Yeah. There's also the item of consistency, right? Like, I sometimes run into customers that come and ask us to make a certain security boundary for them, features to make us, like, they might ask us about, oh, why can we not have unsyncable passkeys, which we launched a feature which they now can, but then at the same time half of their company still is a password only account, right? And so, or they allow, like, they have no control of device management, basically letting malware roam free. And so I think part of the clarity needs to also be consistency, and sometimes you have to point organizations or executives, and this is a bit tough, a bit scary sometimes, at their own inconsistency. Say, hey, I know you're worried about this, and I don't want to undersell it, right? I understand you're worried about this, but number one, we put the bar here, and even if something's happening there, we're not crossing the bar. And number two, by the way, there's this other thing that you're not, that is an easier way in. So we have to bring the critical attacker journey in to some of these conversations to make sure that people understand that they also need to be consistent before having certain worries.
Right. And that goes into, like, you were talking about when we were just having a side chat about stymieing innovation because you're paralyzed about all these other things, and sometimes you do have to make those stands. Like we're assuming that this happened and that you're up to this level because the net benefit is greater than what the threat is, and what we want to do to move people forward and to give them better security in the fullness of time. We're gonna understand these requirements, and document it. One of my pet peeves is when on the flip side, people gloss over that because they're like, yeah, as long as your operating system is secure, then none of this will be a problem. And then, or like we're assuming that no one has root access. But that's a hard problem that the CISO has to, address. And by not acknowledging that piece of it sometimes I think is an issue too. Like people try to shift blame around when it's the whole ecosystem of things, and you find that happens a lot of times in like these incidents and when these vulnerabilities are disclosed, and it's like it's not me, it's you, but it's really like it's the whole system, that the ecosystem that you're in needs to happen, uh needs to work. I was looking the other I saw the interoperability for the shared signals effort, which is something that Jeroen and I worked on a long time ago. And that was kind of before that was kind of the issue where like no one would talk to each other in the ecosystem. So if one piece got compromised, like the others would fall, but there was no communication, there was no work together. And I feel like sometimes the shifting of blames impacts that, and like takes away from the overall platform having to be secure. So maybe we're digressing from the original topic, but it is important that you don't just consider your small feature area, because your customers have to deal with more than just yourself. Now you might make those conscious decisions that you're gonna assume something happened, but just be very clear on that
Yeah. Yeah.
when you're communicating about it, right?
So we've talked about clarity. We've talked about being consistent. We've talked about when we create clarity, right, and pointing out inconsistencies when they're brought to us. We talked about being really clear in our communications. We've talked about clarity by establishing the problem we're solving, like the certain security bar or the thing we're holding ourselves to. And now you just added the ecosystem part of it to make sure that when we create clarity, we don't skip the ecosystem, the environment which we have responsibility, or sometimes we're just a victim of it. But then at least we need to make that clear if it's outside of our reach. And I want to bring it to you, Dario, with one final part where sometimes we have to create clarity with our development teams, right? And or like with customers, where an argument might be like, why would I do this by closing this security hole? Because there's still a lot of things else that are open. So before I work on this one, I first need to see some plan for the others or something. How do you respond to that situation?
I mean, I think there's two questions there. One is obviously that you don't want to regress. So you don't want the new issue you're opening or the new attack vector that gets created to be easier to exploit and cheaper and than the previous one. But as long as you make progress, you're introducing disruption to the attacker journey or to the attacker ecosystem. And in the end, that's what we're here for. Like we can't aim to resolve the account compromise. Like this problem will never go away, or the spam problem never going to go away. We spoke about scraping; it's never going to go away. We can reduce it. We can make it harder, and so towards engineering, the engineering partners, I really want to tie back to what are our objectives. What's the problem, the harm, the damage, or the risk we want to reduce? And as long as we're still doing the best work that we can to reduce that in the most effective way, this should be our focus. While we know that other attack vectors will emerge, like attackers will change their behavior, but that's not something we can fix right now. But what we can do is be prepared to detect when it's happening. So that there's the parallel work of let's focus on improvement of the situation we have now, and also start to understand how do we know if some new attack vectors emerge, including ones we predict and ones we don't know yet, and be ready when they become a problem.
Yeah. So that also means that when the hole that is there gets smaller, it's easy to find what's still coming through.
Yeah, and it's also higher up in the wall. So the attacker might need a ladder, or it might need two people who help each other up. So it becomes harder. And so even if it becomes harder and not impossible, you're still successful because you introduce disruption to the attacker. You make X% of your targets less economically attractive to be attacked. And And so that is that is a realistic success, rather to believe that you're going to solve the problem once and for all and can dissolve your account security or your anti-spam efforts.
You need to make sure that everybody knows your vision and where you're pushing to for the future and where your ideal state is, and that needs to be all your stakeholders, your management, your development teams. Everybody needs to be pushing in this long-term direction, but then you need to be concrete about the steps that you're taking to get there, or how you're laying the foundation. You might not know all the steps, but like why this you're building at this point in time is important for the long vision to make sure everybody's pulling together. And this might be a totally, because it's very hard, might be a topic for another podcast, but it's one of the challenges of a PM is to make sure that everybody's working towards the same goal and the same vision. But I think that's important when you talk about creating clarity and like how and why you're doing this specific thing or addressing this specific hole as you make steps on the journey of where you want to go.
Yeah,
and like
so
passkeys, yeah, go ahead.
no, you're gonna finish a point. There's
I was
a
just
delay
saying,
in my
like
mind here.
passkeys, like the long term is to get rid of passwords, and there's some short term things that are going to happen or not be ideal as you reach the vision that's really going to make change in the industry, right? Like there's going to be lots of bumps on the road, but you have to do that work. You have to take those pains, you have to take those arrows to as you go to complete the vision.
Yeah. And it's all about this clarity, right? And I think this has been another really interesting, chat with you both. We talked a lot about clarity today, and it was all spurred by this article saying passkeys are bad because whatever, right? And I've learned a lot. So as inverted PMs, clarity is maybe even more important than standard PMs. We need to be clear in what the problem is we're solving in the vision, right? We want to be, for example, we want to stop password attacks. That's our vision. Or we get rid of passwords. That's our vision. Then we want to make sure that we're, always consistent. And if people are inconsistent around us, we point it out and make sure that we are consistent, that we don't leave a bigger hole open by closing one. We want to make sure that, as Dario said just before, that perfection is not the enemy of progress or innovation. So if we can make the hole smaller, we do it, and we bring that into our sort of clarity. And we talked about also the clarity around urgency and how we communicate. I think we have unpacked the subject of clarity pretty well today for inverted PMs. And as always, it's been a joy. For those of you who are watching and listening, you can find us on LinkedIn in the Inverted PM group. Just search for it, or you can find our profiles. And obviously, we represent our own opinions, not the people or companies or clients we work for. And thanks for watching, listening, and we will see you in the next one.